just get started with a roll call.
Absolutely. Lee? Sabula?
Aye.
Lyra? Scott?
Aye.
Roberts? Price?
Aye.
Geyer?
Present.
Yang?
Present.
Hess?
Aye.
Johnson? Here. Perfect.
Okay, since we are missing some members today, by the way, we'll be doing introductions shortly. Annemarie is our alternate, but we'll be able to have voting rights since we are down a member or two tonight as a starting point. So do we want to go into and of course we have a quorum, so we want to go to the next item.
Good. Well, I just want to acknowledge that we are gathered here on the lands that were originally the home to the Menominee and Ho-Chunk nations. We honor the Menominee and Ho-Chunk communities and are grateful for their stewardship of the lands and waters. We acknowledge these ancestral grounds as sacred and remember the complex history of settler colonialism on these lands and the effect that persists today. Committed to a restorative and healing relationship with the original inhabitants and our community. So thank you for listening. Do we have any additions or corrections to the August 23rd meeting minutes? Barring none, can we get a motion to approve?
A motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Sabula?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Price?
Aye.
Geyer?
Aye.
Yang?
Aye.
Johnson? Hess?
Aye.
Thank you.
You. So now there are a few new faces here. So welcome. Looks like the next item on our agenda is some introductions, perhaps, to our new members. Sure if Michelle or...
Right, actually, yeah, let's have, if you would like to start, Annemarie, with introductions, and then we will introduce all of the members to you and to James as well.
Hi, I'm Dr. Annemarie Johnson. I live here in Oshkosh. I've lived here for 5 years, but before that, I was gone for 7, and I lived here for 10 years before that. We missed Oshkosh so much that we had to move back. I currently work for Pearson, the international, or a global learning company. I telecommute, which is why we were able to move back to Oshkosh, and I work with faculty who teach online, and as part of that, as part of Pearson, I've started working with diversity, equity, and inclusion in my work there, and I wanted to not just influence people out there. I realized I wanted to have something here in my local community where I was doing that same kind of work. I've been a feminist since I was in 3rd grade. I still remember a moment with my mom back then, and I have a particular interest in gender issues, and because of work with online teaching, also disability and accessibility issues, not just with technology, however.
Thank you so much, Annemarie. And James, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is James Price. I'm happy to be here, happy to be a part of the committee. So a little bit of background on me. I'm currently the Director of Marketing and Digital with the Wisconsin Herd. So that's the NBA G League affiliate of the 2-time NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks. So hey, I've been with the Wisconsin Herd since December 2019. Prior to coming to the Fox Valley, I worked for a minor league baseball team on the East Coast. And then before that, I worked in public relations for Baird, and then a smaller boutique agency out of Milwaukee. Did my undergrad at Marquette for in advertising. Did my master's program at Northwestern. So that's my background from the academic standpoint, and just some of my professional. And then just some other things I've been involved with. So I'm also involved with the transport here in town in Oshkosh. So I've been a part of that for the past year and a half as well. I serve on the marketing committee for Propel Oshkosh, which is the young professionals group here in Oshkosh. I do a lot of volunteer work through Community Church Oshkosh, which is where I attend church, and then just other volunteering things I've done while in school years back. I was part of Residence Life and served as a diversity peer educator. Worked in other kind of communication roles there, but I have a particular interest. I'm a Black man. I obviously want to see more Black and brown people where I'm located, but also I just want to live in an area, specifically Oshkosh and region, where it's equitable for everyone. So whether that be things from transit, quality of life, jobs, things like that. And I've always like to be a part of change instead of just talking about it from the outside. So that's why I really had a particular interest to be a part of this committee. And I'm excited to be here and provide perspective, hear what you all have to share as well, and we can get moving on things. But happy to be here and nice to meet you all.
All right, thank you, James. Okay, I seem to have lost Ashley.
Here,
Ashley, are you still here? Oh, there you are. Sorry, too many people. Ashley, do you want to go next as the chair?
Well, yes, I will. Number one, Annemarie and James, thank you for joining appreciate your inputs and can't wait to get to know you better along the way here. My name is Ashley Hesse. I've had the opportunity to be chair of this committee. Apparently thought it would be a good idea. So here I am. No, I've lived in the area for a long time. I'm a Comanche, Apache descent, and just kind of what you talked about, James. Seeing Oshkosh be open, equitable, and equal an opportunity for all people, regardless of color, background, or race or ethnicity, is pretty much why I'm here, and decided to try to take part in this effort that we're in. So I'll stop there and welcome and thank you.
I'm just going to go from who I see on my screen. So Aaron, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Aaron Wojciechowski. I serve on the city council here in Oshkosh. So I'm the council liaison between there and this committee. Really wanted to be on this committee just because I really care about diversity and equity, being kind of the residential young person on council and, kind of in politics and government here in the area. Really care about making sure that young people have a voice in the process, really passionate about the LGBTQ community, the Hispanic community, things like that. So really great to be here and kind of be that middle person between making stuff happen on committee and council. So thank you everyone for being here today.
Okay, forgot to unmute myself. Beth, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Beth Roberts, and I also serve on the county's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, as well as the school district. So I'm just all around interested in trying to figure out how we can not only have a more diversified community, but without question, more opportunities and equity throughout the whole area.
Thanks, Beth. How about Carmen?
Hi, I'm Carmen Scott. I've lived here for 4 years. I moved here from a very diverse population in Hawaii, and just trying to find where I fit in this this whole stage of my life, I am probably the oldest person on this committee. And I think that really matters, that we have not just the race and the gender, but we also look at age, because there are ways that sometimes is not as equitable as it should be. I'm very interested in the homeless issue and the things that are potentially happening there. My part-time job is I do marketing and communications for a doggy rescue called New Possibilities. So I'm very much involved with animals, though I was not a dog person before I moved here. So I'm looking forward to getting to know everybody.
Thanks, Carmen. Me?
Hi, my name is Mi Yang. I currently serve as the board president for the Monk Service Center for the last 5 years. And I have lived here in Oshkosh for over 30 years, raised a beautiful family here. I went to school here. And I'm just so happy that we, the city of Oshkosh, created this DEI committee where many of us could come together and do something better for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mi. How about Timothy?
Hello, good evening. My name is Tim Geyer, and I have been here in Oshkosh a little under 2 years, and I'm a psychologist at Aurora Healthcare. This is going to be my last meeting, so it was really nice at least getting to meet the both of you. Welcome. I'm sure you will do great things on here. It's been a fantastic time being on this committee. Very passionate about the work that we've all been doing, and I'm sure you will all do fantastic work moving forward. So I won't take up too much more of your time, given that I'm on my way out, but welcome.
Thanks, Tim. Moshe?
Is that me? Is that me, Michelle?
Moshe, I'm sorry, yes.
Oh yeah. Thank you very much once again for everybody, but also welcome to the new members to the team. Obviously, we are all on the same boat, and we seem to be moving in the same direction. I moved to this town in 2007. I've been living here since then, and what drove me to doing what we are doing right now was basically because of my own experiences as a Black guy, moving into town where it was, predominantly white population, and through interactions with the police and other things pushed me into the direction of thinking about we needed a voice, a body like this one that could be a place where those that can't speak for themselves would have a home. And over the years, I worked underground with those that look like us to form this committee. And it is my belief that the new members have the same belief like us. So welcome aboard, and we hope to work with you and do good things for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Moshe. And I know I introduced myself off camera, but my name is Michelle Banky, and I am the city liaison. So I work for the city of Oshkosh as the human resources manager, and I am the city liaison along with John Fitzpatrick, who I will allow him to introduce himself as well.
I'm John Fitzpatrick. I've worked for the city for over 22 years. I think it's a great community, and I think this is a very exciting initiative that we're working on right now. And I'm sad to see Tim go, but I want to welcome all the new members. I think it's a great group, and I think you're going to enjoy your time, working on some of the exciting projects that we have going forward.
All right, thank you. I think I have everyone from the committee and the liaisons. So the next thing on our item is citizen statements and public comments. I do not have anyone registered. So
Okay. Then absent citizen statements, we'll move on the agenda. Do we have any public comments regarding some of our agenda items?
I do not have anyone registered.
Okay. Well, that being what it is, we'll move on. And it appears as if we have a couple of presentations coming up from our guests, and I really appreciate you both being here, Alonzo and Stephanie. Thank you very much. So Alonzo, if you would be kind enough, we kind of dedicated some time here to kind of hear from you, get a little bit more about your background. That you shared some of that, but really interested on potential role as a facilitator and some of the work we're trying to do here, and hopefully we have some questions or some input from our committee members perhaps along the way here. But I guess the floor will be yours, sir.
Floor is mine. So first of all, humbled to be invited to have this conversation with you. So thank you, everyone. I was thinking about tonight, and I remember in high school, it always seemed to happen that the year after I left, the team got new uniforms, and like how that would make me feel. So the truth is, my first job out of college was in Oshkosh. I was hired to start Wisconsin's first teen court program, and Winnebago County received that contract. This would have been for dating purposes, 1996. And so I was there for about 4 or 5 years and left. And then I saw this RFP with the DEI committee, and I did do a double take. I went, wait, what? Oshkosh has a DEI committee? It's like all these things seem to happen after I leave. So I was excited about it. I'm excited that you have it. Very passionate about the community I once lived and raised my sister. So thank you for that. I arrive at this intersection with you on this topic, believing a couple things. The first is we have lost all civility in our civil discourse. So that's what makes this hard to talk about. And the second thing is, I think too many people are assuming we all understand the same thing the same way. And order matters. So what I put together for you was a presentation that I'm not going to make as formal as it looks. I believe you might want something for permanent record. What I do not know, however, is do I have the ability to share my screen? Can I do that in this meeting?
If you don't, my administrator behind the scenes will give it to you.
So whoever has mission control, sweet. So will you acknowledge you can see my screen? Can everybody see it?
Yes, sir.
Great. So the way that I approach this topic is I look at everything in the form of an intersection. And so with me, I'm not really interested in having conversation about who's right or who's wrong. I'm more about understanding how did we show up with a topic, and what does that mean, and how is that influencing how we see, receive, and respond to the world around us. You should also know I tend to not use the words diversity, inclusion, and equity, not because they're not important. It's because they are trigger words for people who then arrive with their own bias, thinking they know what the 6'3", 260-pound black man is about to say. So how about we just not use that word? And I look at it in terms of intersections, and I put some things in here for you because I think you should know how I show up. So I have the honor of being invited to serve both locally at the state level, national level, and global level. I'm a huge fan of critical thinking, which has then resulted in me being invited to teach it in other countries. I think we thought our way into some of these situations, and so it's required that we think our way out of it. I also wanted to do this for you to see in terms of my style. So I'm going to teach everybody a new word. Today's new word is nigrescence. Nigrescence. The definition of nigrescence is to return to the state of black. That's what it means. So in 1971, Dr. William Cross introduced us to the nigrescence theory, And what he asked was, based on the literal definition to return to the state of black, can people do that? But for education purposes, here's how I'll explain it, and it requires you to use your imagination. Imagine in this cup, it is all pure black paint in this cup. And I set this cup down, and somebody walks by and they pour a teaspoon of white in here. Can we agree this is no longer pure black? So in a chemistry lab, I'd put this in a machine and it would spin it so fast that what it would do is it'd be pulling the white out. That process is called nigressing. And that's what Dr. Cross asked, can people do? So hold on to that question, and I'll let you tell me if you think people can do it. So I was born and raised Detroit, Michigan. Hold your applause. Love my city. Love everything about my city. I'm not going to let anybody on here say anything negative about Detroit, though, because Detroit just needs a hug. I think we can agree it's some cities around here that need a hug, too. So Detroit just needs a hug. I spent the first 10 years of my life in 9 different foster homes. This is not Oprah. What I'm doing is sharing with you. I'm arriving at this intersection with you with having these experiences. The coolest man in my life was Father Stan. I wanted to be Father Stan so bad. I left Detroit at 13 and came to Wisconsin to be a priest. So I left my family and friends and everything I knew to go to St. Lawrence Seminary High School in Mount Calvary, Wisconsin, which is right down the road outside of Fond du Lac. So I lived on a hill with 270 other boys who all thought we were going to be priests. As the story goes, as I'm sure you can imagine, puberty hit senior year. We all renegotiate the life plan, but at the time, it sounds like an amazing life plan. Not a priest. Graduated from college 7 times. I live in Swamico with my wife and 3 children. I am a father today, but of not the priest variety. I've been self-employed for about 12 years, and I am absolutely confused on why we treat one another the way that we do. So that's me. In terms of my service, I'm a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I am the state of Wisconsin's national board rep for the ACLU. I am the president-elect for SANG, which is supporting the emotional needs of the gifted, our gifted community. I'm on the Police and Fire Commission here in Howard, and I'm on the board of directors for Family Services of Brown County. I did this for you later, just a sample of who I serve and where I serve. And if you want to know more about that, I can tell you. Here's the thing. In my experience with this DEI conversation, if the space is not safe, this is not going to work, which is why it's the first thing I always explain to people. I'm not talking about physical safety. I'm talking about psychological safety. But even within that, we're making assumptions. So when I show up, I tend to not allow people to Google or use the dictionary. Whatever you believe something to be is what it is. And I'm not going to correct it for you. The only thing I ask is that you allow for whatever it is you believe to be incomplete. It's not wrong. It's just incomplete. So whether it's the people I see on the screen or all the people watching at home live, I think we can agree on this. If I ask you for the definition of accountable, can we agree I'd get 100 different definitions if I didn't let you use the dictionary? But here's the thing. The literal definition of accountable means to be in a position to explain. That's it. And you know what we've done, family? We've weaponized it. We've weaponized it. So I'll ask you a question, and if you're comfortable answering it, you can do that by show of hands. How many people on my screen have ever received the Most Accountable Employee Award? How many of you have ever even heard of the Most Accountable Employee Award? I have, however, seen it everywhere, and it sounds like this. This is the only time I hear it, and it sounds like a weapon. You know, Alonzo would get more work done if he held himself more accountable. That team would produce better results if there was more accountability on that team. So the very thing that I can find in our mission statements, vision statements, handbooks, everything seems to be the absolute last thing we recognize. So why would I want to be accountable on a conversation of DEI when it's only going to be used to hurt me? So we have to flip that, like for all of these, courageous, humility, and empowering. And that's my approach. Another thing I wanted to share with you, I want to acknowledge that there are 6 different ways to learn. And sometimes people in my space have a tendency to only introduce it 1 or 2 ways. And I want to remind everybody there's 6. So I need us to get over ourselves and think the way that we do it is the way that everybody learns. How clever or crafty are we at introducing the same thing 6 different ways. Now that last way, role play, I'm going to give a little love to the immortal philosopher Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. I can teach you all the clever tips and tricks you want, and I got words and phrases for days, and none of that's going to matter if we do not put people in a position to practice it. So anything we pick to do for our staff, our partners, our community, if we do not put people in a position to practice it, it won't matter when we need it most. I wanted to put a picture in here for you to have a little fun with. And I don't know the rules of your meeting. I don't know if you can talk to me or not, but this is how it works. What you're looking at is a box of matches on the bench, a candle in the middle, and a fire extinguisher on a motorcycle. Am I allowed to ask one of you to tell me what the story is? Can people engage with me, or is that against the rules of these meetings?
It would be okay.
Okay, so would someone please tell me what the story is? Are you afraid to tell me what it is you see?
Well, I'll just go for it, man. It just doesn't look like there's a whole lot of combinations of those relationships there that would be particularly good for everyone involved. You know, it's they look all a little potentially incendiary or the opposite thereof. So it looks a little dangerous, a little dicey dynamics. That's what I'm seeing.
I love it. Sometimes, people will say, this is a story about how we tend to want what's bad for us. Or somebody lights a fire and then the bad guy comes and puts it out. And when I am in conversations, what I'm experiencing is if I allow what everybody see to be correct, it creates a safe space that nobody believes what it is they see is going to be corrected or talked down to. So I use this picture to help set that safety. Whatever you see is correct. And then I just start asking questions. So what happens if you leave a candle lit forever? Why is motorcycle dude always bad guy? Maybe I'm a little biased because I have a motorcycle, but how come anybody who pulls up on a motorcycle is bad guy? The motorcycle person's not there to hurt the candle, they're to save the candle. But what is our experience and what is our understanding of what these are that leads us to automatically do this good guy, bad guy thing, right? Or what about this? What if I told you I see a father, a daughter, and a boyfriend? Can you see it? Now, the more things I'm telling you, if our relationship is safe, you can see it too. If it's not safe, we're actually fighting about that story, how that's not true. Safety allows both of us to see what we see as true. When it's not safe, we're arguing about what the truth is. Or how about this? If you apply gender to this picture, you went default position. If I say which one is she, in a safe relationship, your brain would go, oh, I suppose it could be any of them or none of them. But if it's not safe, we're arguing about the gender of a doggone candle. That's why safety is so important. And so that's how one of my styles is to how do I psychologically disarm the room that allows us to have certain conversations. And so I tend to use a lot of pictures, a lot of critical thinking to bring up certain points. Here's another one, only because I can't help but make fun of my community sometimes. So up here in Howard at one of our parks, we've removed all the garbage cans. There are no garbage cans in our parks. But there are pretty signs, though, that say if you bring it with you, take it with you. So when I ask people, who do you hold accountable for all the garbage all over the parks? What tends to happen is people do this label thing. It's the patrons, and it's lazy people with no respect for the planet. And they do that. And I let them have that answer. And then I ask, who would not be allowed? I mean, who would not be able to follow that sign even if they wanted to? Kids can't. The blind can't. How about this? Can we agree without making this weird? There are families that take public transportation to the park. And some of these families have babies and babies poop their diapers. Where are they supposed to put that thing? Are we really telling people you and your poopy baby and diaper get back on the bus and go home with that? Or have we somehow created a park for us and them? I'll let you fill in the us and them. Just like that. This is my understanding of adverse impact. What are those rules, though rooted in something pure and good, that are having an unintended negative consequence on particular groups of people? And this is how I do it. I will have us engage in a conversation about parks, not photo ID, because that's triggering. And I'm not sure we're ready for that yet in a group that I don't know is safe. So that's one of my tactics. When I say I arrive at this intersection with you, this is what I'm talking about. Our lived experience, where you're from. I believe all of us respond to things on how we were raised, our learned experience, what we understand through maturity. I'm not going to say age, whatever it is we've been taught, and our emotional intelligence, understanding my emotions, responding to my emotions, the ability to read the room and responding to the room. All of us show up in a room when I meet all of you. What's happening right now at this intersection and what your brain is doing with this conversation. So many different directions we could go with generations. I do think it is important, though, to acknowledge that it's real. And one of the ingredients I would offer to the conversation is it takes 2 generations to forget and 3 to not care. It takes 2 to forget and 3 to not care. So in 10 seconds or less, let's agree that my 4-year-old son does not care about the things his great-great-grandma cares about. I would hope we can agree on that. And so his grandma, when she shows up, or great-grandma, when she shows up, is looking at what's happening in the world and responding to it the way that she's experienced it. And my 4-year-old son doesn't understand any of it because his dad's black, his mom's white, and he can live wherever he wants to live. So how do we get that conversation across all generations moving in the same direction? And so that's what I would do. I would talk about that. So here's my recommended approach. First, I'd recommend an intentional conversation on critical thinking. What does it mean to be a critical thinker? How does it mean? When does it mean? Where does it mean? That's where I would start. And then I'd have a conversation about understanding terms, concepts, and policy. So, for example, here's your take-home assignment. I will never collect it. You are on your honor, and you can check your own work. Without Google or dictionary, what is your understanding of what it means to have a disability? If I didn't let you Google it or use a dictionary, come up with what that means to you and then ask everybody around you. And I want you to notice for every person you ask, your definition just got bigger because we do not all share the same understanding. So I would have a conversation on that. What are we talking about, DEI? Then I think there's got to be some component of skill, which is crucial conversation, high stakes, strong emotion, opposing opinion. When that ingredient is in our conversation, what are the rules of engagement and teaching people how to do that? And then finally, creating a culture of accountability, not in a weaponized way. How do we create a culture where people engage in conversation and explain their experiences and understanding? I will never have a conversation without quoting my mom. So mama said, always drink upstream from the herd. which I'd understand today to mean we are not required to live off of the information of the group. How do we put people in a position to have their own experiences and gain their own understanding and get their own information and then come back to the group? I'm not saying isolate yourself, but we all know what those zebra are doing in the water. You don't have to drink it. And that's my contact information that I put in there for later. So at this point, family, that is what I have prepared for you. I have no idea how to stop sharing my screen. Stop sharing. There we go. Thoughts, comments, questions, anything you want to hold me accountable for in a non-weaponized way?
Does anyone want to start with questions for Alonzo?
I mean, I have.
This is Beth, and I don't have a question, but I really appreciate the non-threatening aspect of what you do, that there's not a right or wrong. You have to meet people with where they're at, and just think about things and talk about things. And that's where I'm hoping that we can get a long ways by doing that. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I also don't have a question. This is Carmen, but back to that candle and motorcycle picture. What I saw, yes, I automatically said that the guy on the motorcycle was dark and trying to extinguish the light. But I saw the candle and I did see her arm up, and it looked like she was going to vanquish the darkness. And so that really excited me that for this committee, we're trying to vanquish darkness that seems to keep coming into our world. And so this little candle had, to me, something that was going to do that. And that's what we're doing as a committee. So I also want to echo Beth that I really like the tone and the non-threatening approach.
Thanks.
So Alonzo, yeah, thanks for taking time today. So I have a couple questions. So you mentioned the Nigrescence and how it's like the return to Black. So I guess I have a couple of questions for that. How do you start to like try to help other people understand what it means to return to Black? And then I guess secondly, like everyone has, I feel like there's a return to something for everyone. What?
Yep.
Like how do you get people to help other people understand what their return to whatever it may be, in the same sense for you as returning to Black?
I appreciate the question. And so here's how I would explain it and answer your question as efficiently as I can. You ever notice how people will say a word twice as if saying it twice is a whole new degree of it?
Right.
I mean, like think about the weather today. I mean, it was hot, but it wasn't like hot. You know, or like I'm hungry, but I'm not like hungry, right? After a long day, your friend says, let's go for a walk. And you say, how far? And they go, well, far, but I mean, like not far, far. Well, we do that same thing with people. And I like to say in training, it's funny till it's not funny. So I'll let you decide when it starts being funny. And this is where Nigrescence kicks in, right? Because everybody's measuring everybody according to a memo in their head on what's real. So hungry, far, far. I mean, she's smart, but she's not smart. What I left out of my intro is I failed first grade, was bused to the next nearest private school where mama didn't read the fine print. You had to be Catholic and you had to speak Polish. My second language is Polish. And then I come to Wisconsin for 16 straight years. And then I go back to Detroit. I think we can agree I'm not received the same way I left. Why you talk like that? Why you dress like that? Well, what are you talking about? I'm Black. I mean, Zoe, you Black, but you ain't. I made you say it in your head. So now, if I am uncomfortable with being rejected for who I am, Nigrescence kicks in, then how do I return to what I was before I left? And what will happen with all of us through experience, through education, through a move, people somehow think we lose who we are. And then we lose our base and place. So where is it I belong? I heard my sister Carmen say that, like I'm looking for where I belong, right? So I'm up in Swamico where they can't stop reminding me I'm Black. But when I go to Detroit, I'm not Black enough. So where is that? And that's happening to all of us. So in the conversation of Nigrescence, I would have people really think through what is real to you and what is the gain from somehow categorizing my blackness. Why can't black be black? Right? You hold up a picture of a lion and you put it in front of kids and you say, I can find a lion in a zoo, in a circus, and in the wild. Which one is the real one? And kids will say the one in the wild. Well, what about the one in the zoo? Well, I mean, it's a lion, but it's not like a real lion. Why? Because of where it lives? That's how it happens. And that's what happens with people who move around, and what also happens with people who never leave. They only have one concept of real. So that's about as quick as I can explain that, but I appreciate the question.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, there might be more questions, Alonzo. So I was thinking a little bit of, obviously there's definitely an opportunity to make sure we have a safe space within our committee. And then, there are so many great things that this committee wants to do. And part of the thing we're looking for a facilitator to help us with is focusing us, right, on a path. Because even though there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of initiatives, do you have some thoughts on, I guess, how to help us focus and really develop a robust plan to make Oshkosh the great community that we know it can be?
Love that. So my simple answer is, if you think about your laundry, order matters. When you do your laundry, order matters. And so, like this shirt yesterday was in a big pile of dirty clothes. And so what I did is I put it in the washing machine, and then I put it in the dryer, and then took it out and hung it up and picked this one for you. My goal was to have a clean shirt. Mission accomplished. But there is something else I could have done. This shirt that was in a dirty pile, I could have ironed it first and hung it up and put it in the dryer. And at 4:30, I could have put it in the washing machine. So as soon as it stopped, I could have snapped it out and put it on for you. It would have been soaking wet and wrinkly, but it would have been clean. And you would have all looked at me like I was crazy. And I would have looked at you like you're crazy, because my goal was a clean shirt. What you did is you applied aesthetically pleasing to it. What you did is you put it in order. So in what order do we agree that we should accomplish our goal? And if we put it in the washing machine first, it doesn't mean we're anti-dryer. It just means we got to do this first. And then we got to do this. And then we got to do this. And I acknowledge there's more than one way to accomplish a goal, but are we clear on the goal, and are we clear on the order? And that's what I would partner with you on. In what order are we accomplishing what it is we say we want?
Can I expand on that? Expand on your question, please. So specifically, as it were written, and this is background information, I would say, and then I'll lead into my question. But when this committee was created, and I'm pulling this right from the resolution that was passed, so I'm apologize if this was not given to you. But kind of the reason why we're doing this is because, so it says, within 1 year of creation of our committee, we are to report to the city manager and common council on goals of the committee and identify 5 to 7 equity performance measures for each city department. So that is kind of our top goal. And I guess, we're past the year, I believe, and we still haven't been able to develop those equity measures and plan. So I guess what I would say, what I'm looking for is someone to help us organize and achieve that goal. So I guess, do you have, any experience or background on, developing equity measures or goals, with previous groups or organizations that you've worked with?
The two that I want to offer to you, because they're similar in design, if you will. So for both Waukesha County and Marathon County, it's the same thing. it's usually triggered by some sort of internal survey. And then we pick specific measurables that we would like to address, but it's usually triggered by feedback from staff. And so if we've never done that, I would say that's got to be one of our top 5. It doesn't matter what we say. What do the people say? Where are our strengths, opportunities? So I would start there. Once we have that feedback, then we look at what are the client facing priorities and what are the leader in the context of delivering through other people priorities. I'll go back to that crucial conversation. It's different when you're a supervisor or a manager versus I don't know, Bob and I, we sit next to each other and we have to learn how to do that. Or the person, when Bob and I can't seem to get along, we go to the supervisor. That's same skill, different execution of the skill. So in terms of equity measures, I would say it's driven by the team, it's driven by the people. I'm not a big fan of the goal is to make Oshkosh inclusive because of the way that my brain works. I don't even know what that means until we define what that means. Because I'm pretty sure I can move to Oshkosh now and live where I want to live if I can afford it. So does that make it inclusive? Or what exactly are we talking about? So I would define some terms, some strategies, and then execute a plan against it. That's what Waukesha and Marathon and I are doing. I can tell you what the Army's doing, but that's a different platform.
Okay, if we don't have any further questions, I'm sure we have 100 more questions for Alonzo. But we so appreciate your time, Alonzo, and obviously we'll be in touch. We have many of us have seen Alonzo in action before, and he is really great at helping people really open up their minds and think a little differently. And I've always appreciated that.
Thanks. I'll make sure you have this presentation if the committee wants it for you to have fun with.
That would be appreciated. Yes, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
And before we move
All right.
on, yeah, to Stephanie, I just want to acknowledge that this is a bit of an awkward situation I would have to expect for the both of you to some degree. It's sort of like a competitive interview where you're all sitting in on one another's interview. So, I mean, I hope that's not, thank you for, shaking your head. No, it might not be how it feels or appears, but I just want to acknowledge it is a little unusual, I have to think, to some extent. So I do appreciate you jumping into the fray and just kind of putting it out there. It's just, and if it's
I'm
not
cheering Stephanie on, just so you know.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. But thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I don't know. I guess next on the agenda, really, we're hoping to do something similar. Stephanie, give you some time to talk with us and kind of share some of your thinking and kind of, your understanding of what we're looking for and how you might help us out.
Hey, can everybody hear me? Because I know it's been interesting with the microphone tonight. So I guess that's the first thing. Okay, good. So I've brought to you something really special, and that's my husband, who's actually doing dishes back there. That was him back there. And I had to text my son and say, can you tell Dad to tone it down a little bit and don't make any weird faces back there in the window. Anyway, thank you for having me. My name is Stephanie Bellin. I have done some work for the city of Oshkosh before, so I know Michelle a little bit from experience. My background's in human resources. I'm 53 years old, and I grew up in Onalaska, Wisconsin. So a very close small town to La Crosse, and that's where I lived for years and years. I went on to go to Madison, and I will say this, when I grew up in Onalaska, Wisconsin, a town of about 9,000 people, we had 2 Black people in my community. No known people who were of a different religion than mine. Now they were there, but didn't know that. I grew up with a gay brother. I knew from the minute I knew what sex was that he was gay. My family did. We talked about it openly. I think my brother kind of paved the way for, I guess, our family's experience when it came to opening up minds to everybody and everything, and opening up hearts to different ideas. So for me, when I went to Madison for school, I had my heart set on being a Badger, and I didn't care about sports anymore. I decided to just, nope, I want to pile into Madison and really dive into my education. Wow, the world changed. I went to Madison and I was like, wow, this is way better. I love this. This is just far better. This world is far better with more people, more color, more religions, more backgrounds. So for me, Madison, I thought, this is where I want to be. And when I graduated from Madison, I came up to Appleton, Wisconsin, and it changed back to small town Alaska. And I thought, why did I leave Madison? And I really started to think harder about it. And I thought to myself, I know why I left Madison. I left Madison so that I could potentially bring Madison to Appleton. And I got on a committee that was I don't know what it was called, to be honest. It was some form of diversity, equity, and inclusion that wasn't called that, which that's where Alonzo and I completely agree, is that I don't really care for using those words because I also feel like they invoke a certain thought or feeling from people. So I served for a short period of time on a committee that was trying to open up people's minds in the Appleton community. Worked in human resources then for a few years, and by a few I mean about 18. Stayed home with my kids for about 10, and I have been working in the human resources field ever since. And in the last 5 years, I've had my own business called Bell and Training Solutions. So that's a little bit about my background and who I am. I have 3 kids. They're all grown adults, but they live at home still, kind of. And 1 grandchild. He's 2 today. So he's kind of a celebration today for me. So that's a little bit about, I guess, my upbringing. I did not prepare a presentation, and here's why. I love Alonzo's presentation. I am just tired of PowerPoints personally because I do it as a part of my job, and I'm tired of screens. So as much as I enjoyed looking at his, I didn't want to create one. So here's how I view this topic. When I talk about diversity, I too, like Alonzo, don't like to say diversity. I like to say a different way of thought or respecting people's thought. So I'm all about being able to open a space where people can say, here's who I am. These are my boundaries of respect, and let me hear yours. And let's find this space in between to respect each other's boundaries and have an appreciation for something that's different. So for me, diversity really is about diversity of thought and opening our minds up to a different thought. We don't have to like each other. We don't have to agree, but we do have to respect people's boundaries. We have to respect people's thought. So that's my feeling on, I guess, diversity, if we're going to call it diversity. My feeling on equity is that I found one picture once that for me really summed up my feeling about equity. And it was showing individuals of different sizes, shapes, colors, just difference, on a bunch of different bicycles. And then it showed them on bicycles that were the same. So saying that we can't get everybody the same bicycle because that just doesn't work for everybody. We need to look at different sizes, shapes, colors, and respect that and get them the bicycle that fits for them, the one that works the best for them. So that to me, I guess, is how I view equity, to give you a picture. In terms of inclusion, that's my favorite. Of the 3, I would say that diversity, equity, and inclusion should be about inclusion, period. And for me, what inclusion means is respecting people's boundaries. It's also diving into erasing labels. I'm tired of labels. When we put a label on somebody, I feel like we limit. And we limit not just them, but we limit our learning experience. So for me, inclusion is about working hard to get rid of labels. Because again, when we say, well, you drive a Subaru Outback, that means something to somebody. And yes, I drive a Subaru Outback. And then we plunk this label on them and we say, because you drive a Subaru Outback, you must love dogs, you must love the earth, you must love to backpack. Oh, and by the way, you might be of a different orientation than heterosexual. Oh, and you must be old. What? What is that? So for me, inclusion is really about saying, oh, you drive a Subaru Outback, so what? You must drive it because you like Subaru Outbacks. Yeah, that's why I drive it. So it's really about breaking down the barriers that exist in organizations, communities that say, we're going to exclude you because, and you can fill in that blank. So for me, I guess that's how I view diversity, equity, and inclusion. In terms of how that fits in for me and what I do, because I own my own business and I'm an HR consultant, much of what I've done in this arena has been building plans for organizations and companies to take a view about what diversity, equity, and inclusion is and how do we change things at the ground level. Now, the way I attack that, and to me it would be similarly as to the way I would sort of facilitate this group, would be, one, we have to understand what the issue, the problem, the concern, the need really is. And I would say we would have to go back to a point where we do, and this is where I also agree with Alonzo, we do need to get information from the community to find out who are the marginalized groups. I mean, who are they? And in what order are they marginalized? And then what's their need? I mean, what is their need? And in order to do that, I believe that we need more people on this committee, and it needs to be people who are representative of those marginalized groups that can say, yeah, this is what we need, because I can't see what I myself versus what somebody else within the Oshkosh community might need. So for me, the way in which I guess I would attack the problem, the issue, the concern that faces the committee is, one, we need to survey. We need to ask the people, we need to figure out who's the most marginalized, and in order of who's the most marginalized, and then what's their need. Then once we know what the need is, we need to kind of say to ourselves, what's doable? I mean, is there a budget? What's the most important thing for each of those groups? And then prioritizing that and ultimately getting to a point where we do have a scope, a plan that has action items attached to it with, I guess, measurable goals. And then a way to not just have a measurable goal, but to go back and say, is this working? Because the best laid plan that we would put into place and we start tackling some of these bits, parts, and pieces for people, it may not work. It may not actually get to the need that people have, especially the marginalized groups. So in my mind, that's the way I sort of go about attacking a plan to put in place for a diversity, equity, and inclusion group. I do it for companies, quite a few companies, and I would love to give you a list, but I would have to ask for permission first to do that, which I certainly can do. And some of the work that I do is as a third-party consultant for a local organization. So for those groups, I would not be able to share that information at all. But for the groups that I do support, I would want to get their permission first to share who. And if they were comfortable, then I would certainly say, hey, here's some references of groups that I could share of people that I've developed diversity, equity, and inclusion programs for. So I guess in a nutshell, to kind of keep it simple, that's me. That's how I view DE&I. And again, like Alonzo, I wish we could get rid of some of those words because they do produce a label that then invokes a thought and then invokes a way we should treat or not treat, exclude or include. And so for me, labels are very limiting. Inclusion is, again, a word that requires a lot of action. So in a nutshell, that's me. That's how I view DE&I. It's how I attack a plan to put in place for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I love what I do, but I will tell you, all of you, that my number one priority for me is my 2-year-old grandson. So he comes first. And really, he's kind of taken over in this stage of my life. So I have time to dedicate to this, but I'm going to be honest, he's the priority. So that's a little bit about me and my thoughts.
Anyone have questions for Stephanie?
Yeah, I have one. Well, yeah. I guess Stephanie, if you had to like pick 3 things that you think could be implemented from just like a really high level and how we can improve DEI within Oshkosh, like what would you say what are 3 things that quickly come to mind, or even if it's just a couple that you think should definitely at least have a game plan to be addressed, and it could be literally anything from things related to transportation, housing, things like that.
Well, James, so because I don't know who the marginalized groups are in Oshkosh, and I don't know enough about the things that you mentioned within the city of Oshkosh, for me, honestly, the first thing I would recommend and help the committee work to do is potentially work with the city of Milwaukee, GARE, to put together some way to, I guess, survey the people that are out there to really figure out what that true need is. Because if you've talked to anybody from the city of Milwaukee, they will tell you the problems that they faced in doing what they did. They went too fast. They went too fast, and they really didn't define and focus and really figure out who are their marginal groups, and then what is the major needs within those marginal groups. So James, I would say that we would have to, I believe, go slow to go fast, and we really need to survey, so that's number 1. Number 2, I would say, I believe more people, than once you find out what those marginal groups are, more people within those marginal groups should be a part of this group and committee. That's the second thing. The third thing in my mind, because training is what I do, right? Training and education, for me, it would be a way to, how do we expand what I do for organizations to the community at large and bring training to where the people are, right? Not make people come to where we are. Go out, and how do we get people to, I guess, have more education, more open discussion, more difficult discussion. So those would be my top 3 things.
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm Carmen.
Hi,
I keep hearing surveys, and if we cannot get people to do a census, if we can't get people to answer questions on something that comes in their email, what is your method of survey that actually is going to be far-reaching and be a net that pulls in more than the typical people who understand the value of communicating what their needs are?
So, Carmen, that's a really great question. And what I have found is that people need it to be anonymous, right? They have to ensure in some way that it's anonymous, and nobody will be able to come back to your door and say, hey, you said this, I don't agree. So anonymous has got to be in the equation. I would also partner with the city of Milwaukee. They did it. They got excellent feedback in terms of how they handled, managed, and did their survey. I would actually want to invite somebody from the city of Milwaukee and their committee, their group, to come in and talk about how they handled and managed that, because for them it was difficult as well. So I would partner with not maybe just the city of Milwaukee, but there are other groups that have used surveys and ways to go out in the community and get that information that they really desperately need to figure out who is the most marginalized and what orders does that come in. So I know for an organization, when I put that together, how that is managed and handled. I have never done that for a city. That's why I would rely on those that have done it before and have done it well and figured out that magic that magic spot to get people to want to, I guess, give information. So to me, I would partner with the people who have done it before and have been successful at it, and really followed their model. And City of Milwaukee is one that I've studied that model quite a bit.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Stephanie? Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate those answers, and you know, it was very straightforward, and it gives me a nice clear perspective and understanding of what a process might look like for, you know, from you, and how you would tackle some of these big issues, and really where we're starting from. So I really appreciate that recognition that we do need additional input, you know, from a broader sector of the city. And that is part of our charge as a committee, is to really, you know, target and solicit input from a broad spectrum of the community, from all walks of life and backgrounds to the extent possible. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. It's not easy. This isn't an easy task.
No, not at all. And so honestly, you know, we were stepped into it. We all kind of just volunteered for the charge. It was laid out before us, the city council, they all put forth the plan and their objectives and what they wanted from the committee. But, you know, reality is what it is. You know, we've been moving along, and this is where we're at. So it is a lot of work, indeed.
It's good work.
Indeed it is. Anybody other thoughts or questions?
I just have one question maybe for staff. Regardless of, you know, who we choose or what direction we go, I think it would be really important to provide the resolution, or sorry, the ordinance or whatever was passed by council, because I was just reading through it, and some of us weren't on the committee when it was passed, but it provides, you know, reasonings as to why the committee was created. It cites studies and research that was done in the city of Oshkosh, and then outlines the duties of the committee. I just think that would be really helpful for whoever we decide to go with, to kind of give them some direction.
Right, and I believe we did provide that to both of the people we spoke to today so that they could see it. And I believe we also provided it to our new members. Please nod at me if that sounds correct. Yes, wonderful. So yes, it is important that we do look at that charge and make sure that we are within that charge, or if we have recommendations outside that charge, that's where this committee can always make recommendations to the council or Mark Roloff regarding what their recommendations are. So thank you for bringing that up, Aaron. That's a really good point. It's a big charge, quite honestly.
Indeed.
All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, I mean, obviously anyone is welcome to stay on the call. But I think, thank you so much, Stephanie. Anything else before we at least let her go radio silent?
Actually, it won't be silent here. There'll be a 2-year-old. It's his birthday, like I said, and he's been eating cake pops all day. So
Good for him.
I'm thinking I would trade places with Alonzo at the football game. It's sugar, cake pops, you know.
Okay.
Thank you very much again,
Thank you.
Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody, thanks for having me.
Yes, indeed.
All right,
Bye-bye. Have a good evening. Well, that was really, hopefully everyone found some of that useful information and dialogue, and a little bit more insight into who we have an opportunity to work with. And yes, please, I think I saw Annemarie with her hand up first. I believe you're on mute.
I'm muted.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Because I'm a new member, I'm wondering the specific point of bringing those two people in. Is it, yeah, I obviously have a general idea hearing their presentations, but from the questions, it sounds like it's just aimed at one specific piece from the charge of the
Gotcha.
equity performance measures for city department. Actually, I just realized what it was. Sorry, my mic was up.
There you go.
At the top of my head. I normally don't do that, so I'd forgotten that I had. So it from the questions, it sounds like it's just for that one piece about the equity performance measures for city departments, but we do have a few other charges. Is it for all of our duties or really just focused on that one piece?
Primarily, it was to help create the document and just get us that initial, document drafted that is speaking to the equity measures and recommendations for each of the city departments with X number of goals and, measurable metrics, et cetera, et cetera. So to create it, being a volunteer group and an advisory body, it's such a big charge. Having someone to facilitate the areas of interest, our ideas, pulling it all together, getting the input that we are waiting for from the city, kind of a sense of where they are from their internal discussions, and these individual city departments, they're creating their own plans of action, so to speak, but eventually we'll have something to respond to in regards to those specific city departments so that we could offer some direct recommendations as advisement as guided by our charge. But I think in addition to that, there are other things that we as individual committee members would likely be able to fit into a structure. And we have some thoughts as to how this could be structured, but really we're looking for someone to facilitate just the actual, just helping organize, keep us on a track to get to a point of completion and just get it all together, and do, essentially a lot of the work that's going to need to be done to just get it all documented and captured in a fashion that needs to be done.
And I can give a little bit of history for Annemarie and James. So the city has a contract with a consultant, and we have been working on our internal DEI plan for basically our employees. So we did start with a survey to our employees as to where they felt we were doing well and not doing well with our diversity, equity, and inclusion plans. From there, we had a day-and-a-half session with our leadership group, one day to be trained on diversity, equity, and inclusion, things like, the history of diversity, equity, inclusion, things like microaggressions, and of course it's eluding me right now as I try to speak, but we had an entire day where we basically brought all of our leadership to a common understanding of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. Then we spent the next day working on what we need to do as city departments, and did brainstorming and working on putting those thoughts together. So we did that as a city. And right now, our department heads are working with Fitzpatrick on taking all of that and trying to come up with what do we need to do internally? What are our metrics or I forget the word. We were using our key indicators for the city. So that is what Ashley was talking about, that we will be presenting those to the DEI committee with all of the internal surveying and background that we gathered in how to make the employer, the city of Oshkosh, a great place to work, and to teach our people the skills that we want them to have, the understanding around diversity, equity, and inclusion. With that said, obviously, we are running a little bit behind schedule. Unfortunately, with the COVID emergency, a lot of things got delayed, and we finally got our on-site training in May and June for the leaders. And of course, we had expected to be able to do that a lot sooner. we struggled with on-site meetings for quite some time. As you can see, we are back to virtual land right now for a lot of our meetings. So, so we are continuing with that, and we do expect to have some of those key indicators to the DEI committee in the near future. Although, again, our intent was to do that within 1 year. We're still finalizing those to present to the DEI committee so we can get their thoughts and feedback. On the other side of that, obviously, it's what else do we need to do for the community, the rest of the charge, as you brought up, Annemarie. And, you know, how do we put together a plan and prioritize what's really important for the community? And, you know, in the end, obviously, this committee is going to give recommendations to Mark Roloff, our city manager, and the council. So that's, I guess, in a nutshell, kind of my thoughts on where we are. I think Ashley did a nice job talking about that as well. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background from what the city has been doing and what, I guess, from an employer standpoint, what I've been doing on the employee side.
So
Thank you both.
So I have a question as well. So I guess what is the timeline specifically for the two people who just presented? What would be the timeline for bringing them on? And then I guess secondly, how will we bring them up to speed with what we're aiming to do? Because it sounds like, at least from what I observed, both of them weren't as knowledgeable as I would imagine someone would be who's, I guess, pitching their business to us to work with us. Like, I would envision that they would have a little bit more insight into what the current state is in terms of DEI, and just even like different statistics. So I guess I'm curious to know, like, what other research will we be providing to them to aid them in this process to make sure that we're doing things that are beneficial for the committee, but also the city. That would be my question.
Right. So, again, I was able to have we did present request for proposals. We actually did not have anyone respond to the request for proposals. However, both Stephanie and Alonzo had expressed some interest in the proposal. I spent about an hour on a teleconference with each of them, telling them a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish and asked them if they would present today. They were both very agreeable and excited to potentially work with the city of Oshkosh. I would say I would ask them to put together a more formal proposal now that they've had the chance to meet you all and hear some of your questions in order to, I guess, work with us to facilitate, again, helping us put together that plan. And, you know, we have, and again, James and Anne-Marie, this is your first meeting. We have put we've had many conversations of all of the things that we would like to do. And I think we need help organizing and prioritizing. But in the end, it's the committee's decision. You know, I'm not technically on the committee, nor is our council liaison. You guys are the committee, and it's your decisions, I guess, on how you exactly want to proceed to put together that plan.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious on the process, because even when I hear words specifically like, while we're a priority, also have this other priority, that to me is just kind of a red flag in some respects. Especially we're trying to get things moving off the ground and work with them. I was just curious on the process to hear as it relates to what they presented.
Yeah, and James, I really like your thinking, and thank you for bringing those points up. And really, just to give you a little more sense as far as just general structure, we're going to be aligning, as far as I can tell, the best way to align this is with our city strategic planning, and those categories. I believe like the 7 categories there of economic development and you know, livability and certain kind of larger buckets. trying
Okay.
to align our recommendations to kind of meet that structure, I think is, you know, to the extent that there is one. And then again, bringing our ideas and thoughts. Like, you know, I know Carmen had put together a document and shared something about 2 months ago now, you know, and we had asked that of all our committee members. If you have like a particular strength or an interest, if you know or see things like me, I have a strong interest in economic development and opportunity and housing, you know, similar to Carmen. So like, I've got a list of things that I've put together and I'll, you know, we'll have to connect so we can kind of orient you to the Google Docs and, maybe, you know, I owe everyone a restructure kind of a chart to start kind of plugging our ideas in so that we will have something as a committee, again, to offer whoever we choose to work with as facilitator a bit more substance to begin with. But there is some structure there, and it is, like Michelle noted, up to us at this point to provide our input, you know. But if we agree that we need input from additional parties, you know, this concept of surveys and things, it's an important one. You know, how are we going to get that input? You know, even if we recognize need, and that might be one of our objectives or one of our recommendations, you know, and this is going to be a living document. That's the other piece I want to bring in. It's not a static, you know, document. It is something that will have to be reviewed, but these are all things that we need to build into what we recommend. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, if there are any other thoughts around this, or if not, I'd like to move to the next item on our agenda, which is kind of a revisit to a discussion around the Oshkosh Herald and an opportunity that had presented itself just over a month ago for the committee to utilize that as a means to help, again, we've talked about a potential need to help educate or just reinforce certain, you know, thoughts or share events, or, you know, there's a way to partner with the Herald as far as just maybe having a column or something on maybe a monthly or a quarterly or maybe an annual basis. It was very open-ended, sort of an opportunity, but there is one for us to potentially utilize as far as getting out messages or thoughts or events or activities, which again was part of our charge to really help, you know, educate and engage with city proper around these matters of diversity, equity, inclusion, whatever they may be. Just kind of an open discussion or a thought. If anyone has any ideas, I know Carmen, you had brought up some thoughts in the past.
Yeah. The question, thank you. The question I have is, we have a very limited budget. Is this an opportunity to purchase space? Are they giving us space? Or are we just in that discussion process of what we want and we go to them?
My understanding, it was more of a goodwill gesture. I didn't understand that there'd be anything around charging of space. We're not like running advertisements or things of that nature. It was my understanding it was sort of, you know, part of that partnership that's potentially, you know, here we are as a you know, a branch of an arm of the city here around this, and so I just think it was a goodwill gesture.
That's exciting because it is, they have the greater readership in terms of from what I've seen. To that, Angie and I met with a reporter from the Northwestern, the Northwestern, who is interested in, her slant is new businesses. But when we chatted, I gave her a list of diverse businesses that may or may not fall into being new. Maybe they were new but didn't get anything said about them because they didn't, you know, wrong place, wrong time, pandemic, whatever. So that's another one that would be her identifying businesses and going out and doing feature stories about them. So that was exciting that they were interested as well. So I do think that this is, the Herald is exciting that they're interested in partnering with us. But
yeah,
there's another one as well.
No, it's good to know. And again, it's just my understanding, and I certainly could be mistaken if there was something else in mind, but that was my understanding. And really, I think it's up to us to decide what would we like to do. Would we like to have sort of a a column, every so often that we could publish just an idea or reshare a post, like just what can we do as a community to help foster discussion or dialogue around,
So where do we go with that idea? Do we
Yeah.
have a lead person that we contact? I
We-
mean, we share a lot of ideas here.
Right.
What I see is we have a lot of good ideas, and then that ball never gets thrown up into a hoop, and the game doesn't get played. So where do we go with that idea?
Well, I would say personally, from my perspective, who on a committee is there anyone who wants to take a lead on this and be a point person for it?
I would absolutely love that.
And
Okay,
Carmen,
so,
I can help.
that's what starts with me.
So,
Go
and
ahead.
I can help facilitate that too. So we do a lot of advertising with the Herald, and with the Herb, but I also I have the relationship where I can talk with him about what that would look like if it was maybe it was a monthly op-ed piece or something like that, where we could share our thoughts on DI, what's happening or around the community, and let alone like ad space, but more so like just from an editorial lens to share what's going on, because that's how I found I found out about the DEI this committee through a story, and I feel like you said, their readership, it reaches as far and wide. So like if we can consistently start to get in front of people and showcase and share what the DEI does, how it's beneficial for them being in the community, I think that could definitely be very useful. And even Carmen, like you were saying, Northwestern, even if it's not new businesses, it could focus on businesses and how they've handled how they handled the pandemic. Because a lot of marginalized businesses, let alone just local business, have had a lot of trouble in navigating this whole scenario. So, I mean, I can definitely help facilitate.
Perfect. I'm excited. I think this is a great thing.
Okay, well, this is exactly why we want to talk about this, because I know there'd be some interest, and as a committee, this is kind of what it's going to take. It's kind of on us to help move these things along. So thank you for asking the question, Carmen, and thank you both for kind of helping at least put yourselves out there and volunteer. We can talk perhaps offline and a little later, about what we really would make sense, because Angie was involved, and what would be the most appropriate channels given how we were introduced to it, etc. I don't want to step on toes.
One last question, or can we get an updated membership list of our committee with contact information, since there's some new players and some other people who aren't there, so that we have a way to contact each other? And also for the new people, I know that there are rules with the city committee, how many people can talk together before it's actually business. And so I don't know if people are aware of that with the way that government committees work. But that might be helpful as well.
Right. I believe we sent our new members a little bit of information, but have we had an in-depth conversation? No. About the rules, and we have to avoid walking forums and stuff. Generally, we advise against having multiple members meet. It's usually easier if it's two, and we conduct the rest of the business in the meetings, so as to not run afoul of some of those open meeting rules. So Carmen, you and I can talk offline, or I can talk with Ashley and have him get with you as well. And I do feel bad because I know Angie was not able to make it tonight, and I know this was an important topic for her. So we'll just have to be careful how we maneuver outside of meetings. It might be where we take a few minutes in the meeting to decide, what the topic's going to be, and maybe who's going to be point person, so that we don't run afoul of the open meeting rules.
Yes, but I think right now, Michelle, what we're talking preliminarily is that, just reaching back out to somebody at the Herald, just kind of, what is going to be our chain, that communication between there. So there's no decisions, nothing being made, it's just trying to figure out that part. And it seems like, James and Carmen we'll connect, and we'll be between one of the two of you to kind of figure that out, and then maybe you can come back to us and let us know, or at some point. But we can talk, figure that out without violating any of our rules.
Right. We just don't want to violate any of the rules.
Yeah, well, I'm learning, so I figured this out, I think.
We're all learning. It's and for James and Anne Marie, the DEI committee is really my first committee as a staff member. So I've been learning right along with everyone else.
Okay, is there any other discussion or thoughts on what we have before us with the Herald? It seems pretty clear to me what we might do for next steps, but anybody have enough thoughts before we move on? Okay. This is part we move into our outstanding issues. The one item we have on here is the Chief Oshkosh Monument, the Enhancement Project Status Report. I've been, I guess, I don't know, Michelle, if you or somebody else from the city wants to report, I'm not sure, but I would just say this and I know Mouché was there, and Beth, I think you were part of it too. So if you have something to say, please add something to my statement here. But it's moving. It's moving. It was moving forward, it seemed. Now it moved kind of sideways. But it's really in the hands of Landmarks right now. It's, for whatever the reason, it's going back to Landmarks. Landmarks has just put out an invite to members of Menominee and Dr. Pascal Manning to go before their committee, even though we just met with a large contingency of Landmarks and their chair and vice chair and everybody. But anyhow, it seems it's in Landmarks, and they need to just make a decision and a recommendation to council is really where it stands. So this is looking like it's getting pushed out into mid-October. There's definitely a strong opinions and a pretty significant difference over this meta plaque and how to proceed with that. And I would say that I would just put this to all of us as, again, a reminder. There's rules, of course, of engagement, so to speak. But I would say there's also rules of civility and representation as committee members of the city. Even though we're just an advisory body, I personally take, I find it's my obligation and responsibility that if I am acting or speaking on behalf of the city, I do my utmost to be respectful to anyone I'm speaking to. And I will say that there were some individuals that were involved in this past meeting with Menominee that were not, I would say, acting in the best of manners, or perhaps speaking in the most respectful of ways. And there was some really strong emotions and some hurt feelings, I believe, that came out of it on the side of Menominee. There was a significant amount of disrespect they felt was occurred, and that was shared. So I think we're working through that, and none of it was from our group. But I'm still hopeful this will get before council. Whether or not we come forward with unified voices from our different respective committees is yet to be seen. But there is going to be one more engagement, perhaps, come October. That's about what I can report.
Right, and my understanding is, just as an FYI, their next meeting is on October 13th. So hopefully we will have an update before our next meeting.
And again, I know Mouché, Beth, if you're on there, if you wanted to say something, please do. But other than that, there's questions, I'll field them, or we can move on.
Yeah, yeah, it was a tough meeting to attend last week, but I'm so proud of our DI committee, because we had invited the elders from the tribe to join us some weeks back, and we put our own recommendations. And I would have thought, like, by now this thing was a done deal. Like I've expressed before in the past and even now, I still strongly believe that the elders or the leaders of the nations have spoken in the way they want the history to be presented. Also, I know the fact that the nation have compromised a lot for so many years to the position where we are right now, that they have not advocated for the removal of the statue. They want the statue to stay as it is. All they wanted is just these extra plaques put around. And I believe in what they say, what they decided should be the best. But putting back the Landmark Commission, to me, makes me nervous in so many ways. I have my own personal feelings about it. And it makes me worried that something that was not supposed to be political is almost now political. So once again, I'm so proud of us that we, as a DEI, we stood with the nation or with the leaders in what they've decided. So I guess we shall wait and see what comes up and see where we can play our role again ourselves, if we could just handle it ourselves. Yeah.
I think you both did a nice job of summarizing. Personally, I think I agree with everything you both said. I was feeling toward the end, well, I was a little frustrated that it was still getting bounced around, but I was feeling like the 4 plaques don't seem to be controversial. The picture and the 5th meta plaque are what was controversial. So it was hard for me to understand why there couldn't have been agreement to say, we're going forward with these 4 plaques. We all agree on this, and we're well, at least it seemed like there was agreement. And then we can work out that other stuff later, because we just keep, it seems like it's an all or none, and I don't understand why we can't do at least the 4 that, and maybe there wasn't enough agreement on it, but it's surprising how incredibly slow this is going.
I also attended the meeting, and I hadn't read the Chief Oshkosh statue, although I walk around it all the time. I hadn't read the plaque that's currently on it until just before the meeting, because I thought, oh, if I'm going to the meeting, I ought to actually see what it was. And I was just horrified when I read it. And I can't believe that so many people were saying, somebody said, let's just skip the meta plaque completely. And I don't understand why so just probably why I'm on this committee, why people were saying there's a problem with the meta plaque. Because I think that's the biggest problem with the Chief Oshkosh statue is the wording on that meta plaque. I mean, on the original plaque. So I hope that doesn't derail it completely. I was just so embarrassed when I saw it to realize that I'd been around for 20 years and hadn't paid any attention to what was written on it before.
I attended the meeting as well, and I like Beth, felt like the first 4, I didn't hear the controversy, and I don't understand either why we can't do that as a start. I think, and I did voice that I felt that meta plaque was essential and that it cannot be eliminated, but I did understand the feelings that some of them expressed, and looking at it, it does have a negative tone. And so my suggestion was that we reword it and maybe not take away the meaning, but present that information in a different tone. Because often when we're talking about all the issues we talk about, it's really the way we approach it more than that we approach it. So I don't know what that landmarks committee will do with that suggestion. I wasn't going to speak at that meeting, and at the 11th hour, like you, I was so horrified. I just had to raise my hand and say to Mark, I got something to say. So I don't know where it's going to go. I just don't understand why we're not at least starting the 4 and then adding that meta plaque with some tweaks if necessary, or with approval to put it on as it is. I didn't think it was negative from my perspective, but I understood what they were saying. I just don't accept it. But yeah, it was an interesting meeting.
I can disagree yeah, so that's where it's at, and we will see what moves forward. And if we have a role, we can play roles as individual citizens. By all means, we have a right to speak our minds. But as far as the DEI goes, as you know, we have a recommendation sitting there. At some point, we will, you know, once there's a final plaque decision there, that our recommendation will be moving forward then. But that's that. I don't know if there are other outstanding issues that are nothing else listed on the agenda. But if there's no other discussion around Chief Oshkosh Monument, are there future agenda items we might like to address or ensure that we are talking about our next meeting? This might be a time to kind of bring them up. There was a few, I think we had, you know, we're still waiting on sort of a report from the city and some of the equity measures and where those departments are at.
Right. I think Ashley and I spoke about, obviously, we will have on one of our future agendas the equity measures. The other thing I was going to put on October, just as an awareness level, is what we want to do about our December meeting. It is December 27th. So right about the Christmas time. So I will put that on the October agenda to talk about if we want to make any alterations with that meeting. We did choose not to have a December meeting in last year, but again, I will bring that up for an agenda item next month. And hopefully we'll be talking further about our presentations, and I'll have some proposals, and if you have any suggestions, of course, get them to me and Ashley. We have been meeting 2 weeks prior to the meeting, and I think that is helping put our agendas together.
This is Beth. I try to choose my words carefully. I feel like we're missing opportunities. Right now, we're in the middle of the Hispanic Latino Heritage Month, and we haven't even talked about anything like that or acknowledging anything like that. You know, there's a lot of different national recognition for different ethnicities, you know, Gay Pride Month, you know, disability related things that I feel like we should be acknowledging somehow. And maybe, you know, as Ashley mentioned before about, you know, people taking the lead with things, I would be happy to take the lead with some of that, because I feel like we're doing some important work with trying to figure out our plan, and, you know, we're addressing things slowly but surely, but we're, you know, we're well over a year into this and not even acknowledging some of the things that I think we could very easily, at the simplest level, acknowledge, if not do some other type of recognition. So I don't know, maybe I'm being too pushy, but that's my thought.
You know, Beth, so I was just looking up Hispanic heritage much, and I was gonna bring up the fact that, like, look, I feel like there should definitely be the discussion behind a development of like a programming calendar, let alone like acknowledging when these months are for people to, so we can at least start to educate other people, because of course, like, we know about these things because it's important to us, but like the huge part of DEI is like informing all the different stakeholders involved, and for people who may not even be particularly interested in it, bringing it to them. So I think part of it is figuring out, for example, like we were saying, having a monthly column where we could each speak to what is going on within that month, to highlight why it's important that you know about Hispanic Heritage Month, why it's important that you know about
Yeah.
Veterans Day, like talking about equity for veterans, like what does that look like in the community? What are things that the city of Oshkosh is already doing that people may not know about? Like, I definitely think there's always something going on that we can use to amplify what the city is doing, or what we could be doing from a programming, from an editorial standpoint. So like I 50% agree with that sentiment. Because it's easy as, I mean, it can be as simple as getting a spreadsheet and a calendar, listing out all these different months, talking about, you know, what do we want to do. And I mean, acknowledgement is the easiest thing, and the most, it's very simple from a messaging standpoint. And then from there, you can get specific. Okay, these are local businesses that we can use to highlight in the community, like working, figuring out. I mean, I know the contact who runs downtown. She's the manager at downtown Oshkosh. They do a lot of different things throughout the month, but like, is there a way to highlight
Absolutely.
AAPI,
Yeah.
things like that? I'm just
Yeah, you
talking
just read my mind. That to me, it would have been the easiest thing to do some type of acknowledgement. I wrote one up for the county's committee to be read, and then just to, you know, like Carmen said about different businesses owned, we could have just encouraged people to spend the last month eating at those tadipos and south of the border and whatever other you know, Hispanic owned businesses or restaurants. Just encourage that, to say, hey, you know, just simple stuff like that, because as we're working on this big master plan and all the other things we're working on, it seems like we could take on some really low hanging fruit and make something happen.
Well, I appreciate the discussion, and we've done that in the past, and what it takes is just this. Bring it to the table, bring it to the front, because I can tell you what, my brain is only so big and it only thinks about so often. So, you know, I can only do so much as well. But I'm joking. Like, I love the idea. A calendar of events would be great. You know, again, I look to the city to the extent, like, where can we find a space? I mean, can you host us a landing page? I mean, is there some place that we can have to put this out somewhere proper, or do we need to rely on our community partners and all of this to make these things happen? But I think the idea is great. A calendar of events, a simple spreadsheet, and you know, if we can put that in our Google Docs, I mean, it's a place that we can, again, just living, breathing, we can just drop in information and just kind of populate it. We all have you know, an interest. So I think that might be a logical way to perhaps start, or just to look what's already out there.
I have a question. Like, who is our microphone as it relates to like what we would externally communicate? Like, would it be like this? Would it be the city and like their external marketing channels? Would it be the chamber and their like?
Those are great questions, and those are ones that have yet to really be answered or made clear to me, unless somebody else has an answer. It is one of those things that I wonder as well, James. Like, really, where's our microphone? You know, where's our channels besides this meeting?
Right, because like, to me, like, if we're relying on the city to put out something on their channels, great for a formality standpoint, and it shows the city is sharing that. But like, there are so many other channels that we could be utilizing, like Downtown Oshkosh, like Visit Oshkosh. I mean, that could be sharing these things in a very organic way.
Well, what you need is our own informal or formalized marketing team. Pretty much what we need, and what is what we don't have, because all these things are really, yes, it's all there. So maybe that is a future agenda item. I don't really know what it looks like, but you know, it's something we can talk about. And if you have some thoughts or more specific ideas, please, you know, send Michelle or myself or Angie an email so we can make sure to get it on there. But like, I don't really know. You know, it's something I don't have an answer to, really, other than trying to leverage our individual connections at this point.
Right.
Can we put marketing on the next month's agenda? Because it's
written down
like this, and you know, I think about how we've had little to no public comment on these meetings since they've been on. That just surprises the heck out of me, that the community has nothing to share with us, tell us, ask us about. So I would love to see marketing, and I don't want to, again, jump ahead of the plan that needs to be developed. I'm not trying to side skirt that, but.
Right. No, I totally hear you about that. Sorry.
No, I think you're right, because even from a communication standpoint, people, when they're reading these and consuming things, they can understand what Hispanic heritage must mean for like a business they can support versus like a strategic plan, which is something that's obviously that's internal. That's important that we share that. But for like people to understand and at least educate themselves on a very basic level about what does it mean to be able-bodied, or what months correlates with that? What does it mean for veterans? Even around the holiday season, what's the difference between Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas? Like, what are all these different things? Like, I think there's a lot of ways we can tell
We
the
can have
story.
fun. There's a lot
Right,
of potential.
exactly.
Indeed, indeed. Well, no, I added that. I think it'll definitely make it so everyone kind of come ready to discuss and get your thinking hats on, so to speak. And it's an important one, and it's a direct charge of ours. But again, I know we've been saying it, and I've heard it said, "Oh, we're over a year in, we're over a year in." Well, I've personally taken to give myself a lot of room and grace to work with this during my tenure, as long as it is, because it is a long-term project, and it's nothing you can rush. As much as I want to see action right away, I do acknowledge that I have my own limitations here. I would love to see more activity come out of our group. So please, this is great, and let's support each other and foster some of these initiatives and these actions, and this is how we make progress, as well as hitting our bigger target here. So this is great. I appreciate it. Are there other thoughts about future agenda items now? And if not, just please just send Michelle, myself, or Angie something, and we can get it out there.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, last, but I'd say not, Tim, I know you made the announcement earlier. And I got to tell you, I've really appreciate the couple of conversations we've been able to have, and I kind of remiss in not kind of tapping on your shoulder and talking a little more honestly about what you've been up to in your career, and it's intriguing. So I understand you may be taking another path and moving to another city. What's going on there? If you can share, I'm really curious, because we're going to miss having
Yeah,
you.
so I wanted to just say thank you all for being such amazing teammates in all of this, and especially during kind of a year and a half of a lot of isolation, kind of having an avenue to really kind of feel integrated into a community. So I've really valued that time, and I'm glad that we're able to meet in person a couple times throughout that year and a half. So that was lovely. But to speak to kind of my next steps, I wasn't looking for anything. A job opportunity, a faculty position at the medical college was created, and they kind of reached out to me, where I'll be able to train other clinicians, do some research on traumatic injury in the city of Milwaukee, as well as treating the traumatically injured in the hospital there, both inpatient and outpatient. So it was a fantastic opportunity, a very bittersweet decision for me, just because I have loved living in Oshkosh so much, and appreciated working with all of you fine folks, and in my position at Aurora. So I will definitely miss my time here for sure.
Tim, that is super exciting, dude. What an opportunity. That's phenomenal. Congratulations, man. That's really cool to hear. We need a lot more, as you know, clinical psychs and professionals out there doing the work that you're doing. So I'll thank you for that. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a cool opportunity.
Great, thank you so much, Tim. Again, I think everyone's going to miss you, and we appreciate having the time to get to know you.
Yeah, you as well, and good luck with everything. Keep up the good fight, so to speak.
Indeed, thanks.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim. We're gonna miss you.
All right then. I will. That's a good way to end, I guess. Well wishes and good spirits. I think I'd like to adjourn the meeting, so we can get a motion to wrap this up.
I'm a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Hey, do we need to do a roll on that? No?
How about
All those in
all
favor?
for adjourning?
Raise your hand. Aye.
Nice.